Hello everyone. What we are going to do today is we are going to be learning about our problems in the colonies. So when Australia was first set up by the English settlers, we had a few issues that happened in the colonies. So today we're going to look at some events that happened and explore all of that. It's pretty exciting. You may find it quite interesting. So first of all, when the Australians came to the new colonies, they were really far away from their homeland. So their homeland was back in England, and they couldn't jump on planes, they couldn't drive here or anything like that. They had to go by boat, and it took 18 months to get from Australia over to England and then back again. 18 months, it's a year and a half. And what they had was they had to if they ran out of food, if they ran out of medical supplies or any rules and regulations, they all came from England and they all took 18 months to get here. Okay, so what was happening is if they had food shortages, that caused starvation, because by the time the food came, people were gone. They didn't have enough food to last. So they started setting up farms, but it didn't necessarily work for everyone. And another struggle that they all had was the clothes that they came with. Originally, people would have come with maybe one or two items of clothing. There wasn't really stores that they could go out to the shops and buy new clothes. They had to deal with what they had. But they weren't just lying on the couches relaxing. They were working farms. They were doing hard labour and building things. So their clothes began to fall apart, and they just didn't have a lot of means to go and get new supplies. So that was a lot of frustration caused by for the early Australians, and also the fact that we were being ruled by a country that was nowhere near Australia. That really frustrated quite a few people. So we're going to start looking at some events that happened. And some events that happened, one, we're going to go in order. So the first one happened in 1804. So remember, Australia first started getting prisoners and convicts in 1788. So in 1804, 233 Irish convicts escaped a prison farm and wanted to steal ships and sail back to Ireland. By doing this, it wasn't just the police that were after them, it was also the military, so the armies. And armies coming in and enforcing the law, that is called martial law. So on the 5th of March, a day after they escaped, a rebellion, so people fighting against the laws, was fought between Irish convicts and the colonial authorities, so the police and the army. And the convicts were hunted down and hidden away in a place called Castle Hill. And the final raid suppressed the rebellion. So the Castle Hill uprising is also known as another name, also called the Second Battle of Vinegar Hill. The first Battle of Vinegar Hill actually happened in Ireland in 1798. And so the first and only major convict uprising was the Castle Hill uprising, and it was only put to an end by using martial law, so by using the armed forces to come in and stop those convicts and prisoners. So it led to 9 people being killed and hundreds more being punished for the crimes. And because of that, martial law was officially withdrawn a week after the battle. So after that, the army were told that they weren't allowed to enforce the law. And that is what happened with the Castle Hill uprisings. Like I said, it put the end to martial law, and then that's just the different definition of martial law for you. The next one was called the Rum Rebellion. And on January 26th, what is January 26th besides Banu's birthday? It is Australia Day. But we know this from earlier this year that Australia Day wasn't celebrated on January 26th back in 1808. It's something very much more recent than all that time ago. So let's back to it. January 26, 1808, an armed takeover over the government took place. This takeover was known as the Rum Rebellion. So the governor of New South Wales at the time was a man called William Bligh. And William Bligh had enemies with a lot of influential people, meaning people that had lots of money and had lots of say onto how things were being run in the colonies. He didn't get along well with them. He was known for being quite rude and always interfered. And because of this, he got off on the wrong foot with the influential people, but he also was very rude and took things away from those that weren't as wealthy as him. So he organised for people to be removed from their houses, and the land that they had rightfully been given or bought, he took that land away from them. So he wasn't a great man in what he was doing, and everyone wanted him out of the job as governor. So what happened, he actually arrested a man called John MacArthur on January 26th. And John MacArthur, with his arrest, one of the majors, so one of the people that was in the army, George Johnston, he immediately ordered for the release for John MacArthur, and he actually put in a petition. So everyone was voting to have Bligh arrested, saying that he was unfit to lead the colony. So in the evening at 6 o'clock, Bligh was actually found hiding under his bed with plans to escape, to get away from being arrested. So Major Johnston removed Bligh from his position, and he was actually put under house arrest. So he didn't have to go to prison, but he wasn't allowed to leave his house. And so after the removal of Bligh, the colony of New South Wales was ruled by the military. And in 1810, so 2 years later, after being ruled by the military for 2 years, Lachlan Macquarie was appointed as the colony's new governor. So if we have a look here at the picture that's on our screen, we've got a drawing of Governor Bligh underneath the bed with some military officers arresting him. The next one is the Ribbon Gang outbreak. So the Ribbon Gang outbreak is also called the Bathurst Rebellion, and it took place in Bathurst in the colony of New South Wales in 1830. And during this time, in October of 1830, the bushranger Ralph Entwistle, he led a group of convicts or convicts that had escaped, and they formed the Ribbon Gang. The gang was actually made up of 130 people, and they ransacked villages. So they robbed villages and hurt people. They raided farms, stole food, they stole firearms, they freed more prisoners, and they got in a lot of shootouts with the authorities. And so the Ribbon Gang outbreak became the largest convict uprising in New South Wales since the Castle Hill uprising. So nearly just about 20 odd years later, after the Castle Hill uprising, this Ribbon Gang outbreak happened. And so the gang fought ongoingly against all of the military and infantry, so the police and the armies, and until their numbers got to about 10 people. And so it forced their surrender. And during the rebellion, both sides had many deaths and injuries. So on October 30th of 1830, the remaining 10 bush rangers were put on trial. They were convicted of murder and of stealing, and the men were actually hung in Bathurst on November 3rd of 1830. And the site is now known, where they were hung, is now known as the Ribbon Gang Lane. So this picture here has a picture of some of the gang members holding up a horse and carriage. So they would have stolen all the goods that they had in that horse and carriage, and they potentially may have killed those people as well. So they were pretty scary and pretty dangerous. Then we have the Eureka Stockade. And the Eureka Stockade is an event that is quite often referred to as the birthplace of democracy here in Australia. So let's get on to what it was. So the Eureka Stockade took place in the goldfields during the gold rush in Ballarat in Victoria on December 3rd in 1854. The rebellion was led by gold miners who were fighting against the authority from the UK, from England. So what was happening was the miners were being charged a miner's license and tax. They were charged these things even if they didn't find any gold. So if they didn't find any gold, they still had to pay money as if they did find gold. And the money was really quite high. And so they started to object against paying all of this money. And on December 1st, so 2 days before the rebellion, they actually broke into a place called Bakery Hill and they burnt all of their licenses. And it started at a place called the Ballarat Reform League, and the rebellion then grew to be quite deadly. And it was a fight between the miners and the law enforcers. And the miners fought as one, defending their rights and liberties. And after the battle, a white and blue flag, which we call the Eureka flag, it actually was erected up, and it is one of the flags that's used by a lot of unions. And so that's why we call it the birthplace of democracy, because it was where the miners fought for their rights and they got to choose their leaders. And here's just an image here of the Eureka Stockade. And I just need to tell you your independent task. Sorry, that was Mr. Quadro coming in, and I will go see him in a minute. But our next task for you today in your working from home booklet, you need to look at what event. You need to choose one of the events that we've looked at here, and you need to tell me which one you've chosen and why. Then you need to add in the question of what happened. Tell me in your own words what happened. Then you have question 3. How do you think it affected the people in this event? How do you think it affected them at the time? And then the last one, I would like you to answer, how do you think the event contributed to the Australian Federation? How do you think this led to Australia becoming its own country? Okay, so that's your 4 questions that you need to answer today. Let me know if you have any questions.